I'm Barnaby Parker, and today I'm with Darren Sharp, who is the Group Head of IT at Tokio Marine Kiln. Hi Darren, how are you?
Hey, I'm very good, thank you.
You're looking sharp.
Thank you very much.
So we're not quite post-COVID, are we? But it's been a funny, strange few months. How's lockdown treated you?
I think I'm sure everyone will say it's been an interesting time. I think the first few weeks as an IT leader were particularly challenging. We were quite fortunate. We have a Citrix environment, so our systems were set up for remote working quite nicely, but we didn't have things like Microsoft Teams from day one. We were planning to roll out in the future, so we accelerated a lot of that work in the early days. Personally, I was quite fortunate. I had some space to work, but actually I didn't see my children for 7 weeks of lockdown because they're with their mother. We're not together, and they couldn't travel. So it's, from a personal perspective, it's been quite challenging as well as a work perspective.
And are you now a hero across Tokio Marine Kiln?
Certainly had more kudos in the last few weeks than the last few years. Yeah, lots of mentions from all sorts of people, particularly the CEO. So yeah, I mean, I guess it was a time to step up to the plate, and thankfully I've got a brilliant team and several years of hard work building that team. So it all paid off. Yeah, it's been really good actually.
And in terms of timing, I mean, there's no perhaps perfect timing for COVID to strike, but the timing was all right for you, was it?
Yeah, it was. I say, our core environment was very robust. So about 5 years ago, we put in place an annual essential maintenance program to make sure we weren't building up any IT debt, be that systems that weren't supported, or be that struggling with capacity. And so we were confident that we would do well. That was put to the test with an all-company work from home day on Friday the 13th, actually, of March. And I spent that day at home, fingers crossed and hoping everything would be fine. My team monitoring everything. And yeah, everything went well. And then that gave us the platform then to be able to say, okay, the core stuff works. Everyone can log in. Everyone's getting on with their job. Now, what can we do to accelerate working differently? So that's what we've been doing for the last few weeks, frankly.
And are you a different person?
Am I a different person? I'm probably a little bit more relaxed, funny enough, yeah, strangely. You've got to be fairly resilient to do this job anyway, right? Because it changes so often. But I use the time to try and improve that balance of life a bit. My partner and I said, let's just get up as if it's a normal day and go for a walk. So we normally walk into the office. We'll just go for a walk in the hills. And it did that not every day, but most days. And thankfully, we had some glorious weather as well. Hence a bit more of a tan. And yeah, even last month, we walked 250 miles in June, which is kind of crazy, right? But I feel much better, much fitter. And it really set me up for the day. Some days, like Sunday morning, we were out before 6 in the morning thinking, are we crazy people? But yeah, really enjoyed that. And I'm definitely going to be doing a lot more of that, which is good.
I took myself off on a Wednesday, took the train from Kensington to Guildford with a backpack, a tent and a sleeping bag and a stove. And I walked from Guildford to Canterbury.
Excellent.
About a month ago in a sort of lockdown escape.
God, good for you. Well, so I've got a house near the South Downs, and as a young teenage kid, I used to walk the South Downs, do the South Downs way. So this was a kind of a bit of a throwback.
Where in the South Downs?
So I have a house in a village called Hurstpere Point.
Okay.
So if you look on a map, it's kind of almost directly north of Brighton, but the other side of the Downs, yeah. I'm very lucky to be able to be based there during the last few weeks because lots of fresh air and actually very, very low COVID-19 infection rates as well. So we've been very fortunate.
That's where I grew up around there.
Really?
South of Petworth on the South Downs.
Oh, fantastic.
You probably walked past.
It's a lovely, by the way, I grew up in Brighton. So I used to cycle out Brighton and cycle through the downs and then walk along the downs, and yeah. So it was quite nostalgic at first, and then just thought I could just do this more often. Why not?
I'm rather envious of your lockdown. My lockdown in Kensington hasn't been quite the cycling.
Yeah, no, it's we certainly. I mean, my broader team has been a challenge. You know, some people have had some real challenges, both in terms of either lack of space or just mental health, actually. So my role as a leader kind of changed quite a bit in those first few days. You're always becoming
I was going to ask, how do you measure, how do you monitor mental health across your team?
It's hard, right? It's really subjective. It's something that you can often pick up through body language and other cues, and they're things that you're not getting remotely. So you're having to rely on your broader team network. We're fortunate that we do have a good team and a very low turnover rate. So a lot of people have been around for a while, and people know them as individuals, and I've got to know them, so they can sense if there's a different tone in their voice, etc. Equally, I've had at least one of my team just come to me and say, "I'm really struggling. What do I do?" And it's bad because they're struggling, but it's great to know that they feel comfortable enough that they can raise that, because then I can do something about it quicker.
And is that being comfortable enough a tribute to you or the organisation or something else?
I'm not very good at blowing my own trumpet, but I would probably say a tribute to me. My approach is very open and honest with the team, and I've been here 7 years. It was 7 years last week, crazily enough. But I've got a very open leadership style, and no one's afraid to come forward with anything, frankly. So, the more I know, the more likely I am to be able to kind of help, or solve the problem. So yeah, but that's nice. It is nice that people feel comfortable to open up. And we did some structured stuff. We said let's do a virtual pub, like I'm sure many people did. But we did a quiz to name the pub, and what was nice is you had like 80 or 90% of the team, coming up with a name and voting for their favourite name. And then the team's only about 60 people, but I had 48 on the opening night, and we called it the remote in.
Did anyone get in trouble? You have to send anyone home, or mute them, I guess is the.
Well, this is it, yeah. So no, I mean everyone was going quite funny on the call, and in fact, we've recruited quite a few people during lockdown.
Right.
And I know a lot of people have struggled to recruit, but we have recruited a few. And there was a chap joined our information security team, and he asked if he could come along to one of the remote in sessions while he was waiting to join us. And I don't know if you ever saw Tiger King, that Netflix.
I saw a few of them.
Yeah. So that had just come out, and I'd been like, what on earth is this thing? So, of course, younger members of my team were telling me all about it. And then in a fit of either genius or stupidity, I decided we should kind of dress up in a Tiger King themed pub. And this new chap came along, and I have to say he still joined us somehow. And if you can imagine me in a mullet wig and a tiger outfit, then yeah. So everyone had lots of fun, as well as.
I don't think I've seen that posted on social media.
No, you won't. No, my team are really good. I'm sure loads of them have got lots of screenshots, which I'm sure will be worth quite a lot to them if they want to get something out of me. But yeah,
it's very strange, actually. I don't seem to have seen any Tokio Marine Kiln requirements on the Venquis list either. I don't know what's been going on there, Darren.
Don't know.
Insurance has been going through quite a lot of change. I mean, even pre the last few months. What sort of projects have you had on the go at Tokio Marine Kiln, and how has that? And have you ripped up your plan, and are you starting again?
So we were going through a lot of change anyway. I mean, to your point. So
I mean, that's just the change being PPL. AI is
even bigger than that. So for us, so we had a Lloyd's business and a company business,
right?
And we took a decision last summer, actually after Brexit. So part of Brexit, we moved some of our business away to another part of the group, which made far more sense for them to run it. And then last summer, we took a decision to put our company platform into what's called runoff. So we've not, not accepting any new business for it. Struggled with profitability on that side of the business, and that's changed the whole shape of the business. But of course, from a technology perspective, I've still got all those systems. I'm still carrying some depreciation. I'm still running some of those services, and runoff can last for years. So now my challenge is, well, how do we optimize what's left from a technology platform to service the new business going forward, while still meeting all of our regulatory obligations for this business that we've decided we don't want to do anymore. So that was already challenging to say the least. We had decided that we would also reduce our London office footprint even before COVID-19.
Right.
So we were in the middle of redoing this building to sublet a floor. And my team were going to move out and work elsewhere in London. And in fact, on the back of this, we've now managed to properly introduce flexible working, which we've been talking about for 6-7 years.
We have the same at Venquis.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in our office on Fleet Street. It's normally a 60-person office. You can probably see it's fairly empty.
Yeah.
Three of us in here today. We've been trying to have work from anywhere, and now we have work from anywhere.
Yeah. Work from anywhere, and one of my favourite phrases, which people are starting to pick up on, which is outcomes, not hours.
Right.
So when people are working at home, I've got people with very young children, and I'm like, well, why are you working in this beautiful time slot where you could spend loads of time with them? So don't do any work then. Work at another time. And I don't really care if you take 5 hours to do your day or 10 hours to do your day, whatever it is. I'm not interested in those hours. You know what your objectives are. You know what the outcomes are. Do what works, right? So, and that's been great.
Outcome orientated is a very compelling. It's a very compelling case for outcome orientated. But do you think it'll stick?
Well, it's been kind of my mantra here in IT, at least for several years. And we've operated. So when I joined here, I hadn't had a desk for 7 years.
Right.
So when they said, "Here's your desk and all this space," I'm like, well, I don't understand this. So I'd been pretty peripatetic. I'd used the equivalent of Microsoft Teams from 10 years ago, when it was in its infancy. So I was very used to this and just working anywhere and making the best use of space. And if people had a dentist appointment, in the middle of the morning, I wouldn't say, drag yourself into London after your dentist appointment. What's the point in that? So they said, "Oh, can I take a day off for my appointment?" I'm like, "No, you can just work at home, go to your appointment, and then come back and work." And that, if you give that flexibility, then you get it back in spades. It absolutely pays for itself. So for us, I think for IT, it will definitely stick. I think for some other areas of business who aren't so used to working that way, they're going to have to go through that change curve. They're going to have to start to understand that you pay people to do a job, and you need to trust people to do a job. And trust doesn't come from seeing they're at their desk. That doesn't mean they're any more effective than being at home. But that takes time to build. It does take time.
The limitations they're not technology limitations, are they? They're cultural and leadership.
Completely cultural. If you look at some of the tech though that I've just rolled out in the last few weeks, that it's not new tech really. The Teams thing is relatively new, but things like e-signatures. For years, the compliance and legal team said we can't use them, and there was never a compelling reason why they couldn't, other than it was a change. In the first week we gave it to everyone. And now you've got the saying, well, why didn't we use this before? And you're going, well, kind of did say, yeah. And so you're right. It isn't technology. As long as someone's got a reasonable broadband connection, you can deal with all the tech. It's absolutely about changing mindset. And if you haven't worked in another environment, that's quite difficult because you've got no frame of reference. And I'm quite fortunate. My entire leadership team are actually not from insurance. So we've all got different backgrounds, and we've all done different things and different experiences, and it's very good to bounce ideas of each other. And so many people ask the why question, and not enough people ask the why question.
But so, Darren, you're a forthright, innovative leader, and you're working for a big Japanese organization in an industry which is, I wouldn't describe it perhaps as the dark ages because too many of my clients might be listening, but it's it's perhaps not been up there with the fastest forward thinking of industries until perhaps the last few months. So you're coming across a little bit as a kind of, you're someone that's suddenly been freed, allowed to do things. Everything's been, the raison d'etre has been proven
there
for
is
you.
a feeling of liberation in a way. Yeah, I mean the team are hugely motivated. And it does feel like the penny's dropped, which is frustrating because there were what felt to be some very obvious things you could do, and there were too many people saying, well, we can't do it unless the whole market does it. The construct of Lloyd's.
Yeah, of course.
And how difficult things like PPL have been. For us, it was like, well, we can't make the brokers use it, so therefore we won't try. So rather than everyone getting together to say, how could this benefit us all? Everyone was waiting for someone else to lead. And of course, if you do that, you're just going to wait. So that's been frustrating. Yes. But it does feel like now it was probably do or die a while ago, and now it really is do or die. And we've proved that you don't necessarily need the Lloyd's box. We've proved you can use technology now. So let's take away some of these barriers and let's take away some of these kind of myths, if you like, and try and turn this market into. You're not going to turn it into the retail market because it's a different volume game, but all the reasons that people said that they couldn't change with tech, you can now get rid of a lot of those.
And what do you think the future is for Lloyd's?
I think the future for Lloyd's, I mean, it's got to get its act right in terms of this future at Lloyd's piece. John Neal's come up with a range of things which have been mooted as these are the art of the possible, and some will fizzle away, and some will succeed, and that's an okay strategy, as long as enough things succeed to make a difference. You don't want everything to fizzle away or people to start to get a bit jaded that there's no progress. So I think it needs to make sure it executes on its ideas better than it has done in the past. But it can't do that on its own. If the likes of my organisation and broker organisations don't want it to succeed, then it won't. And then if it goes as a market, well, then we're all gone, right? So everyone needs to realise that that everyone's got skin in the game here. And to your point earlier, it was stuck in the dark ages for a long time, but that just means there's loads of opportunity to make change. If you turn up somewhere and it's running almost optimal efficiency and you still need to make savings and you're still struggling to make profit, that's a bigger challenge than taking something where there's some blinding, obviously expensive things that you could change straight away.
So, Darren, are you
just going to be a bit bolder and take a few more risks?
Well, it'd be interesting to see what sort of do you think they will be bolder and take more risks?
I think some people will. I think possibly those that don't might not survive, and Lloyd's is being far tougher.
Yeah.
So it's about to start. It's round 2 of Decile 10, if so culling those that aren't performing well in the market. And thankfully, we were the best performing syndicate last year, over half a $1 billion. So so that puts us in good stead. We've got a new executive team, and the CIO says we need to be bold and take more risks. And that's calculated risk. That doesn't mean stop doing what we're told. That means, that means, stop being quite so timid. I mean, I think, probably speaking out of school here, but make no apology about it. A lot of people have been too scared of people like the regulators to, when they say do something, to say, well, why? What risk are we reducing by doing this, or what value are we gaining by doing this? Or is this proportionate to what's happening in other sectors? I think historically people have gone, I better do that because the regulator has got ultimately can cause us to be shut down. But I think there needs to be some healthy challenge to some of those things, to say the regulator's there to help the market run and with the appropriate controls, and we should be helping them to understand what those appropriate controls are as an organisation.
And what other industries are you drawing inspiration from?
Well, so there's a lot of people who hark back to the banking industry and how they responded, and rightly so. I mean, there was plenty of practice that needed to be changed, right? I'm not saying that, but I think the way certainly us as an organisation handled that request from the regulator probably cost us a lot of money and a lot of opportunity. People don't often cost up time, and so often I'm in meetings and they go, well, there's no third party cost involved, but yeah, you can spend 2 years, distracting yourself by doing nothing to do with business growth and just dealing with this kind of regulatory challenge, which needs to be dealt with, but you need to understand the opportunity cost associated with that. And I think that's what people are starting to learn, and move to position a bit like some of the IT service. What's good enough? I'll do this. This isn't a differentiator. This is good enough. I will then focus, my energies over here with the customer, or over here with my growth strategy, where I can actually get some return for that. Yeah. And the return is good for the customer and good for us, and therefore good for the market. So actually it's the right thing to do.
And what about some of the Silicon Valley firms, so the big tech? You look at them in awe or fear, or how do you approach them?
It's a challenging one, really. I mean, as an organisation, Tokio Marine is invested in some startups, but a lot of that is around the retail space. So Tokio Marine itself in Japan is very retail focused, a lot of motor, a lot of life insurance, and their industries I think are going to change hugely, particularly around motor. So they're looking at those from a specialist insurer's perspective. Is a Google algorithm or an Amazon algorithm going to come along and say, who needs underwriters anymore? Possibly. Does the underwriter of the future need to be more about relationship management and portfolio management? That's probably a conversation for another day. But, I think gone will be the days where you rely on an individual's intellect in order to price an individual risk.
A few dogs in the office here, Darren. Can you hear them?
I can just about hear.
Right.
Well, that's good. Dogs in the office is great.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's an empty office. They're chasing around. It's changed the dynamic a bit, but then if something doesn't change in COVID, we've got it wrong, haven't we?
Exactly.
So, I'm also. What do you think 20-year-old Darren Sharp would think of the man you are today?
Oh, that's a good question. Did 20-year-old Darren Sharp think he'd be sat here talking to you? Probably not.
Of course so.
Sat in the walkie-talkie, heading up global tech for a financial services company? Probably not. No. 20-year-old Darren Sharp was partway through a chemistry degree, thinking, "Why did I pick chemistry?" 20-year-old Darren Sharp probably didn't know what he wanted to get into. But I was always heavily involved in computers in one shape or form. So I guess I'm probably not too surprised that that's.
Are you a programmer?
I'm not a programmer. No. So the closest I got to programming was my mum buying me, a computer magazine and typing in the code into my not even my Commodore 64, my VIC-20. So that's showing my age, right? If you look, you might need to Google a VIC-20 to see.
I'm going to have to Google a VIC-20.
You're going to have to.
I'm delighted to say.
A crap version of a Commodore 64.
Right. ZX81, I think, was mine.
Well, it was around that time. Yes,
oh,
it was
okay.
Absolutely around that time. I didn't come up through programming or software development. I actually, I did some programming at university, just alongside maths and everything else. And then I went into service industry and then kind of fell into IT, and I came through the IT service management route. So I'm an ITIL expert and spend a lot of my time building the service teams and understanding business demand, translating technology into something the business could understand. Yeah, which is probably why I'm sat here, I suspect.
And how would you say technology leadership has changed, if it has changed?
It's certainly changed in this market. I mean, when I joined, many of the kind of CIOs or heads were basically the person who knew the application that had been built, right? And they knew it better than anyone else, so they ended up becoming the head. And in fact, we still have one of those chaps. He's a lovely guy, and he works for me. I think as time has gone on, people expect technology to work, right? So back in the day, when I started doing the service management, I'd say, right, the tech's just got to work like your phone. You're at home, you pick your phone up, and it works most of the time.
Yes.
People need that now. The iPhone came along. The core tech has to just do what it's meant to do. So the IT guy can't be the guy that somehow just keeps the lights going, somehow backs up our data. You know, they're just givens now, complete givens. It's how can technology help us make a difference? You know, how can it give us some kind of competitive edge? Whether that's we're cheaper, whether that's we've got more data, whether that's the systems are supremely reliable and, you know, means we can crack on. They're so fast, we can do anything we want at lightning speed. So it's, you know, this whole idea of getting what the business wants and then trying to align it to IT seems to have gone as well, because you can't do anything without tech.
Yep.
I mean, you know, every single project has a technology component to it. And I guess my job is firstly to understand how all that knits together, make sure I'm delivering it at the right kind of price point, but I also understand that how it all connects together, because so often in the past, individual business units with all good intention would go off and say, I need a pricing solution. So you go and buy one. Didn't talk to anything else. You still have someone manually keying the data into, you know, some kind of downstream system. Yeah. And now the job is to make all of that flow, and ideally all of that flow automatically. So you're spending your effort on dealing with the outcome rather than, you know, getting all the machinery in place. Yeah.
You're so is future scanning part of your role? Are you spending your holidays in Silicon Valley or?
No, not me. I'm feeling a bit old for that. Probably in the area of information security is probably where we do most future scanning, just because it's such a big threat. And
yep.
You know, our head office are rightly, that's probably their biggest concern, cyber attack. We've got a ton of customer data. Yeah, we can live off our reputation as well. And there's huge amounts of fines. So around the security space, yes. I mean, I probably know more about that than many of the other areas now. And that wasn't a core strength of mine before taking this role, because at the time it wasn't so prevalent. In terms of other tech, yeah, we've gone through a lot of the hype cycles. I mean, you know, I've been in the corridor, our CEO saying, where's our blockchain? Why have we not got one? You know, and there's a danger you can get drawn completely into that. What's coming in the future?
Do you have a blockchain?
We don't use blockchain. No. We have done one
grown up of you.
Yes, we've done. Tokio Marine itself has done one trial for letters of credit for cargo business. But yeah, I mean, it's a bit like, you know, buying a hammer and then running around trying to find a nail to hit with it. Yeah. So no, I think right now there's a lot you can do with, frankly, mature and relatively cheap technology. Saying that, I've just established an RPA and low-code platform service so that we can start to tackle the cost efficiencies and the workflow stuff. So I guess a bit of both, in summary.
There aren't you haven't replaced the brokers with robots yet?
Not yet, but I could.
That's probably quite tempting, isn't it? I don't know. Is the lamb open nowadays?
The lamb isn't, but I went out to get a sandwich. So the Pret's open around the corner. The Grapes is open, if you know the Grapes on Lime Street.
Yep.
But the lamb is not. And in fact, if the fire alarm goes off, I'm meant to muster outside the lamb, but we've been told that we must go home instead. So.
Right. And Darren, what does the future hold?
For me or TMK or both?
Oh, well, a bit of both.
I'll take over the world here. Now, I think what I'm seeing happening is different conversations. So I'm having conversations with the CFO, my boss, the deputy CEO, which I probably wouldn't have had even 6 months ago.
Because your star has risen.
Well, because my star has risen, but there's also just a broader acceptance that if we're going to create a TMK of the future, technology is at the heart. Whether I'm any good or not, right? You know, technology is at the heart. So yep. Those conversations have to happen more, and that's really encouraging to see. And yeah, I've got meetings in the diary that I probably tried for years to get in the diary, and you know, no interest before. Yeah, now suddenly there's interest. You know, which brings pressure with it. You've got to deliver, right? But that's what I'm being paid to do, and that's what the team is for.
So how will you how will you leverage this great power of yours, Darren?
So I guess in simple terms, it's getting the ear of the strategic decision makers, and they've changed as well, which is quite helpful. And in fact, we just had a new chief underwriting officer joined on May the 4th, so Star Wars Day. I remember that day very well. You know, so it's a really good time. Relatively new exec, new CEO started in January. I had a new boss in October. You know, IT is recognised through this period of basically keeping the company running. It's like, so the stars have aligned, for want of a less twee phrase, to say, okay, get me more involved in this now.
Now is the time,
and I guess I can be bolder with those conversations to say, you need me to be involved in these conversations about the future, rather than, you know, wait to be asked.
So new technology investment plan coming out shortly.
Yep. Well, actually, we have investment, and is it in the right areas?
Yes.
That's, I guess, that's the thing we've got to look at.
But do you think that you will be there are programs that you've been working on that will now be discarded, or how much of a change of direction are you going to have?
No, we've been through our whole portfolio, and almost nothing's been put on hold.
Right.
But I think, again, pre-COVID, we'd already tried to set our stall out for the next 2 years about how to become a better company, frankly.
Yep.
So if we'd have had to throw all that in the bin, then really would have cocked up before COVID came along. I think the key thing is to look at the way that some of those projects might have been approached in previous years. So, you know, an upgrade of a policy admin system in years gone by would have taken 18 months, and there have been all these must-have requirements. You know, a policy admin system doesn't give you any competitive advantage, right? So you need to be able to say, I'm just going to take it and I'm just going to do what it does, because that's what I bought it for. And we're starting to see that message be received with less resistance than it would have been in the past. And that's great, because you can just do that and then go, right, well, the way you get some competitive advantage is by having this larger information set that you never had before. Great, well, we'll build that for you instead. You know, with the money and the time we've saved by not bespoking our policy admin system. So that's how we've got to do it.